I want to go over the trading strategy known as the double sevens. So let's go to the Pinkfish directory and start Jupyter Notebook. This is going to be part one of a 4-part video on the double seven strategy. We'll open that up and we're going to do a video for each one of these files. So as an overview, this is the file that has the actual algorithm for the strategy in it. This is a driver for that file that lets you run the strategy and then do analysis on it. Then the optimizer is what it sounds like. And the spreadsheet is a spreadsheet. And this will take us all the way through from algorithm analysis with this file to optimization to actual trading. So the first video, we're going to concentrate on the algorithm itself. The double seven strategy. So it's a simple strategy developed by Larry Connors, and you can find it in this book, Short-Term Trading Strategies at Work. And it's a mean reversion strategy looking to buy on dips and sell on strength. And it was initially designed for ETFs. I made some enhancements to his basic strategy, and I will go over those as we talk about the implementation here. So this is the standard way that, just going back to here for a second, that I name these files. You can call them anything you want, but I always use these same names for each of my strategies. You'll notice that in the examples. And I implement these strategies as a class. And the reason I do that is that when I run the optimizer, each one of the iterations of the strategy, it's going to be an instance of this class, and I'm going to store the results in a dictionary. So that's why I use a class for this. All right, so the class itself only has one callable function, and that is run. So briefly, a little sneak preview here of the driver file. You can see it imports that strategy, and then it instantiates the strategy, right? And then it runs the strategy. After that, all the results are stored within that instantiation. You have the trade log, the daily balance, and the stats. Okay, so let's close that. Okay, so the first thing we do is we set up some variables and options. So if we look at the init function for this class, we see that it has the symbol, the starting capital, the start date and the end date, and then a dictionary of options. Okay, the default for that are these. These are the default options, and these are chosen to I would say the opposite of an optimization. These are kind of like the vanilla values that you would choose. So we start off with use adjusted equal to false. So we're not going to adjust for dividends and splits because we want this to be based on price levels, and it's a short-term trading strategy. Besides that, we're going to be using ETFs that don't have splits, so that's not something that we need to worry about. Okay, so then we're going to use actually I have used cash equal to false here. So that's going to go out and grab from the internet every single time. You can change that to true if you want to. And the stop loss percent Basically, this turns off the stop loss. If you want to set a stop loss percent, say 10%, you would put this at 0.10. Set the margin to 1, so we're not using any leverage. And we're going to have the period to be 7. Then use regime filter is whether we're in a bull market or a bear market, and that's a flag to say we're going to use that filter or not for our trading. And then there's an additional filter. This is has nothing to do with the regime change filter. This is another simple moving average that we can use to decide if we want to get into trading or not. All the trading for this is on the long side. Okay, so first we go through and we set some class variables, or I should say instance variables, equal to these passed in values. Then we copy the options. So that's a dictionary. So we copy those. Make a copy of that dictionary, and then there's some other variables that we're going to set, and we just default them to none. That's the time series, the trade log, the daily balance, and the stats. All right. So with that out of the way, let's jump over to the run method, and we're just going to do a fetch and select trade period. And notice that we're passing in those options over here. Then we're going to add technical indicators. The first thing is the regime change. You can look up this crossover. It's in the indicator module for Pinkfish. And what this does is it's using a 200-day moving average and the price. And when the price is higher than above the 200-day moving average, for every day it's above it, it's going to increment this value. So you can look at that and see how long you've been in that bull market. And then as soon as it turns to a bear market, that is, the price goes below the 200-day moving average, then this is going to start incrementing in the negative direction, -1, -2, so forth. Then this is the special simple moving average, and I'll go over that now. And what this does, and hang on a second. What this does is, if you can imagine, this is SPY some time ago. Looks like it was in March of 2020. What happened was we had the SPY take a hard dip here. This is during the COVID stuff. And it passed through the 50-day moving average and the 200-day moving average. So that puts us in a bear market territory. Well, what we can do is normally, without this, ignore this 50-day moving average. Actually, this is the 200-day moving average. This is the 50-day moving average. So we pass through here and we're in bear territory. Then we come back. We're not into bull territory until here, and that's when we're allowed to trade again. But we missed out on some good gains here, right? Quite a bit of good gains. We can recapture some of that by using a second moving average. So if we're in bear market, but we pass through some other simple moving average, then we go ahead and start using our algorithm again. So that's what that second, it's an enhancement I discovered or invented for this strategy. If you set it to the default, which is 200, it will have no effect because that will line up with the regime filter as well. Here we set the period high and the period low, and you can pass those in as options. Then we finalize the time series, and we create the trade log and the daily balance logs. And then after that, we run the algorithm, we get the logs, and we get the stats. Okay, so then after that, these variables will all be filled in, and we can use them from the driver side, the driver file. So let's quickly go through the algorithm. We set the trade cash and margin. Then we set the stop loss as a dollar amount to 0. Then we loop through the time series. We get the date, and we get the high, low, and close. And those are just additional variables so that we don't have to say row.close down in this code. We can just say close. and then we set the end flag. And then we implement the sell logic. Sometimes it's easier to implement the sell logic before the buy logic, and that's what I did in this case. So first we check to see if we currently have any shares. That's this line. Then we check to see if the close is equal to the period high, okay, or we've the low is less, the day low is less than the stop loss, or we're at the end flag. And if that's the case, we're going to print a message, and then we're going to sell our shares. We're going to print the message if I wanted to find out when the sell happened as a result of stop loss, so that's why that print is there. In terms of the buy logic, we're looking to sell again. Remember when buy when we hit a period low. So we check to see if the close is equal to the period low. But then there's some more conditions that we need to satisfy before we get into trading. If we're not using regime filters, then ignore this other stuff. We'll just buy and sell regardless of the regime. If we are using regime filters, then this comes into play. And we check to see if the regime is greater than 0. That indicates we're in a bull market. Or the close is greater than the additional filter, simple moving average. So I already went over that. And if that's the case, we enter a buy order, and we set the stop loss, and then for each iteration we record the daily balance. And that does it for this algorithm. And look for this part 2 of this, which I will go over the driver file for this. Thank you.